Today we are going to talk about neorealism. Neorealism is the contemporary version of the theory of realism, which we have already discussed in the previous lecture. The architecture of international system conditions the behavior of states. This is the primary claim of the theory of neorealism. And the next important claim is that the organizing principle of international system is anarchy. Means, in other words, that this theory does not base itself upon the idea of human nature being quarrelsome or some other factor leading to anarchy in the international system. Their basic claim is that the international system is so structured that the states have no option but to come to conflict with each other. It is a situation of anarchy. The most important proponent of this theory is Kenneth Walls. And he says that states are like balls on a billiards table. And in the absence of any higher authority, they compete with each other for survival. So states have to compete with each other for survival. And as you already know, that survival is the primary objective of states in the international arena. And when survival is at stake, you would do anything and everything for your survival as a state. And your competitors in this game of survival are other state actors. So therefore, the competition becomes so very tough, so very stiff, and so very dangerous, because what is at stake is the survival of all state actors. And in this self-oriented anarchic system, states have no option but to help themselves. So, as if we are all, shipwrecked and we are in an ocean and we are all fighting for our survival. So, in that survival situation, we can't actually help anybody else, even if we want. Because in that kind of a situation, we are fighting for our lives. And when our lives are at stake, we cannot trust anyone, we cannot help anyone, because what is at stake is so very precious. So therefore, we are all fighting for our lives, and we would do anything and everything to survive in that situation. States in the international system are rational actors, and their objective is always to maximize their benefit and minimize their losses. So what states basically aim at, according to this school of thought, is relative power. Means we are not only in the pursuit of power. We all want power, because power is the ultimate currency in the international arena. But what we want is relative power, that is more power as compared to our adversaries. So therefore, what we try to do is that we try to maximize our gains vis-a-vis the others and minimize our losses. Or if you look at it in a different way, we want to maximize our benefit and maximize the loss of our adversary. Because the more we gain and the more our adversary loses, we are in an advantageous position. So therefore, in this situation of survival, where we are all fighting for our survival as state actors, we all have to do anything and everything to ensure that we survive in this world. So therefore, in this operational situation in international politics, the ethics of diplomacy or statecraft acquires very marginal importance or significance. So all other states are our potential enemies and threats to us. We cannot trust anyone. So this is a situation where we don't trust anyone And since we don't trust anyone, anyone means any other state, there is always a likelihood of cheating. So therefore, since there is lack of trust and there is cheating, the possibility of cooperation is very minimal in this situation. There is a story of a stag hunt which has been talked about by Rousseau, and that is very instructive. It's a small story, but it illustrates, how states behave in this situation of anarchy in international politics, where they have no one to help themselves and they have to only fend for themselves. In this story, what happens that there are five hunters rather, who are hungry in a jungle, and they go in the search of a stag. Stag is an animal, which is of significant size, and they all think that if they are able to kill that stag, they all would get sufficient amount of meat which would be able to fulfill their needs. But as they go in the search of a stag and they actually locate a stag, and one of them is almost about to kill that stag, at the same time, one of the hunters sights a rabbit which is in very close range of that hunter and which he can easily kill and which would probably suffice for his needs. Now, immediately what happens? That this hunter thinks immediately that if I am able to kill this rabbit, my needs will be fulfilled. And he knows that if he tries to kill this rabbit and kills him, there would be enough noise and the stag will be scared away and would probably run off, and the other people would not get anything. But oblivious to their concerns, he is only concerned about himself, because in this situation you are only helping yourself, as the theory claims, and you don't think about others. So immediately what happens, that this person kills the rabbit, scares the stag, which runs away, gets his rabbit and walks off. So what does this situation tell us? Does this story tell us? It tells us that states as lone actors in international politics have to help themselves. There is no one to help them. They have to survive. And in this situation of survival and self-help, there is no trust. There can be cheating at any point of time, as this story also illustrates, and you can't trust anyone. Now, this situation of distrusts creates a security dilemma for state actors. The neo-realist theory talks about the security dilemma, which has been very nicely illustrated in the book entitled Theory of International Politics, which Kenneth Waltz authored in the year 1979. Actually, it is the point from where this theory started gaining ground. Now, what does happen in a security dilemma? Security dilemma is illustrative of this situation in international politics, where even if one state is doing something which is not non-aggressive, which is not intended at hurting the adversary, but the other country, because of this lack of trust, is not able to see it positively and would always think that whatever this actor is doing, it is actually intended at building up weapons or preparing for attack on the other actor. So even if you try to do something cooperative, something peaceful, something which promotes amity between two countries, eventually that is not promoted because of that distrust, where my positive actions as a state actor are always construed as negative by the other actor. I'll give you a small situation to understand this. For example, there are two neighbors. Of course, this story does not exactly explain the security dilemma, but if you place this story at the level of international politics, you will be able to understand what it is. As I was saying, that there are two neighbors and they are not on good terms. So one neighbor has a gun, and that gun is put in the cellar for a long time, and probably he thinks that I should take out that gun and now clean it and then put it in the cellar for use sometime later. So he takes out that gun and goes on the top of the house, and he is cleaning that gun and putting it in the sun so that it gets some heat also. And he has no ulterior motives, no intentions of killing anyone or using the gun on anyone. He's just taking care of his gun properly. But what happens with the neighbor? When the neighbor looks at it, he immediately thinks, oh, now the gun is out and he is cleaning the guns. That means that this gun is going to be used against us sometime in future, and immediately he starts probably thinking and even planning to do something to preempt that attack. And it is also possible that he might do something aggressive against this first person who was cleaning the gun without the first person having any intentions of harming him or doing anything aggressive, and therefore a conflict starts between the two. Exactly the same thing happens in international politics. If India starts doing a military exercise, although whenever we do a military exercise, we inform the neighboring countries, especially Pakistan, if we are doing it on the Pakistani border, that we are doing this military exercise and this is being done from this date to this date and this is in this place. So you should not be worried. It is a usual military exercise. We go and do it. But what happens? When we are doing a military exercise and we are duly informing the Pakistani military establishment about it, and we have no intentions of starting a war or any kind of conflict, but what actually happens is that the Pakistani establishment is immediately on the alert. They start looking at it from a different angle, that maybe if India is doing an exercise, that means that they have some ulterior motives. Maybe they want to do something aggressive, and they start doing all kinds of preparations in their country. And the same happens with us also. It's not that only do that, they are doing that. So what is this? This is a dilemma. That is the confusion, that what is this exercise intended at? How can you believe the other party, what they are saying, what they are proclaiming? You are going to see the actual situation on the ground, and since there is so much of distrust, you can't have faith on what the other party has said. And why you can't have even 1% of faith? Because what is at stake is your survival as a state, the life of the country. So you can take small risks, and believe other people for small things. But when your life is at stake, when the life of a country is at stake, you cannot have faith on the adversary. Whatever the adversary says, whatever they proclaim, you can't have any, faith on them. And therefore what happens? That all countries are constantly making efforts to boost up their security establishment, getting more and more weapons, more and more arms, and getting more and more secure because they are always fearful of the other countries. And especially if the other country is your adversary, you are even more alarmed. So therefore, all state actors are constantly trying to beef up their security, because they are living in this situation of anarchy, where there is no overarching authority over you, to control you, to regulate your behavior. So you have to fend for yourself. And Kenneth Waltz argues, and his realism or his neo-realism is called as defensive realism. The other side of this realism is called as offensive realism. We'll come to that later. Now in this defensive realism, Kenneth Waltz argues that all states perform similar functions. Means functions of all countries are the same. They collect taxes, they enforce their laws, and they do the executive functions, and they have judicial systems, and they have got municipal functions. All functions are the same. The difference is in their capabilities. Now here, the term which was generally used by the realists was power. Now in place of power, the neo-realists use the term capabilities. Now capabilities is a much wider concept. It includes that military power, but it includes other kinds of instruments which add to your power. So it is a comprehensive basket of abilities which a country has to influence other countries of the world. So that is known as capabilities. So here Waltz is arguing that states differ in their capabilities, and therefore their actions appear to be different. For example, you see that one country is very aggressive, the other country is not so aggressive, the other country is maybe a bit meek, maybe following some peaceful policies, and we quite often start attributing names to such countries, that this country is bad, this is going and attacking other countries and it is so aggressive, and X country is very nice because they are always very peaceful, and so on. According to the explanation of Waltz, it is not like that. Nobody is good or bad. It depends on your capabilities. If your capabilities increase, you start getting more aggressive in terms of building up your security establishment. And if your capabilities are relatively less and you think you'll not be able to do that, so you adopt some other options. So the capabilities are unevenly distributed in the world, as we see every day, and that is the reason why the actions of countries in the world are also different from each other. Now, the international system, is reflective of the relative distribution of capabilities among countries of the world. Now, if after a certain period of time, the international system changes, according to Waltz, the system changes because the distribution of capabilities among countries has undergone a change. Meaning thereby the countries which were maybe the most powerful today, they are not. Or maybe some other powerful countries have come up. Maybe some low level countries in terms of capabilities have acquired relatively more capabilities, and so on. So when the distribution of capabilities changes, the international system also changes. For example, in today's world, if you look at the international scenario, you see that the international system appears to be on a cusp of major change. And that change, if it comes in the international system in due course, it will come when there will be a definite change in the relative distribution of capabilities among countries in the world. So that is how it happens. So according to Waltz, the structure of international system is more important than leaders. He argues that leaders do not make any difference. For example, if in America, for example, there is one person as a leader, as the president, and tomorrow somebody else comes in, that will make very little difference in what America is doing in international politics. Because it is the structure of the international system which determines what leaders would do and not the other way around. According to Waltz, he argues that the bipolar system which was created in the world post the Second World War was a more stable system as compared to a multipolar system which is relatively less stable. Because in a bipolar system there were two countries which were the superpowers and the other countries were all rather relatively less powerful, and it was very easy for that bipolar balance to be maintained in international politics. The other important thing about this neo-realism, as explained by Waltz, is that realism is an inductive theory. He argues that all units, that is states, they all behave similarly, and their behavior emanates out of the power which they have. So apparently their policies might appear to be different, as I just now explained, but that difference in policies is a consequence of the difference in their capabilities. So if some states appear to be weak in international politics, it is not that they are very satisfied with their weak condition. They are constantly trying to build up their capabilities. And they are constantly trying to build up their capabilities to become more effective as compared to the capabilities of their adversaries. That is relative power. So the moment my relative power as compared to my adversaries becomes more, my actions or my policies in international politics as a state actor will undergo a significant change. He also says that there are areas of cooperation in international politics, means that it is not that there is no cooperation in international politics. There are possibilities of cooperation in international politics, but cheating in matters of security policy and the relative power competition among countries is a major roadblock. Means we try to cooperate, we go to some extent in cooperating, but the moment the matters of security comes in, the possibility of cheating comes in, we go apart, which was very nicely illustrated in that story of the stag hunt, which I just now related to you. And the other thing is that since we are all competitors in this race, it is a question of relative power. So how can I cooperate with my competitor? We both are competitors and we are running in the same race. So the result of the race is dependent upon our relative performance. So for example, if there are two very good friends and they go for a job interview, they are the best of friends, but there is only one job at hand. So they are each other's adversaries by the nature of the game. Only one of them will get that job. The other person will not get the job. So even if we are the very, very good friends, we want to cooperate, but the situation is such where cooperation is not possible. And it is a zero-sum game where you win all and lose all. So it's not that we can share that job here. Either I'll get job and my friend will not get the job, or vice versa. The same thing happens in international politics. Either I win or I lose. We can't both be winners. We can't share the spoils of this competition. It is either this way or that way. So that is the reason why cooperation, although being a good ideal, is practically not possible in this situation in the international arena. The other side of this story of neorealism is the explanation which is known as the explanation of a group of scholars who are known as offensive realists. The most prominent exponent of offensive realism is John Mearsheimer, who actually has given this classification, who calls this explanation of Kenneth Waltz as defensive realism and his own explanation as offensive realism. He says that international relations is a prisoner's dilemma game. Now, prisoner's dilemma is a huge explanation, but for your understanding, it is one game in the game theory, whereby it is said that states are so much, doubtful about the intentions of the other party, and since they do not know what is going on in the minds of the other actors, so therefore they have no option but to choose to make a suboptimal choice in matters of policy. Means there could be a best possible choice, but they are not able to make that best possible choice because they don't know what is going on in the minds of the adversary. If they knew, there could have been cooperation. But since I don't know what is going in your mind as a state actor, and you don't know what is going in my mind, so we end up making a suboptimal choice. He says that conflict is something which is inevitable in international politics, and therefore policies of arms control and disarmament are pure follies. It is something, which is defeatist. He argues that there is no logic for a country to go for disarmament or arms control, because the moment you go for disarmament or arms control, you are trying to tell the world that you don't want to expand your security capabilities. You are not interested in going forward in bolstering your security even further. And that kind of a policy encourages other countries to start preparing to attack you, or even they might be tempted to attack you. So that is a defeatist policy according to Mearsheimer, because otherwise you were safe when you were having concern for your security and you were building up your security. But the moment you think in terms of disarmament and arms control, you are giving a chance to other expansionary states to attack you. So that is something, which is not right and which states should not be doing. He argues also that great powers are always searching for opportunities to gain power. So if you are a great power, you want to be even more powerful, because the power situation in international political arena is constantly evolving. Either you are going forward or you are going backwards, because everybody is moving. It is a dynamic situation. So therefore, the best option for you is to continue to gain more and more power. And your aim is to gain hegemony, that is dominant position. The kind of position in international politics which America was able to gain post 1991 or 2. That is the position of a hegemon in international politics. So you want to gain that position because you don't want other states to come to your level. Because this hegemonic position is something which is very useful for you, which is something which is very good for you, because you are able to control and dominate the international political arena, and other countries are no match to you as to be able to threaten your security in the immediate future. So that is what the offensive realists have to argue. So therefore, what we learned today was the perspective which comes to us in the form of the theory of neo-realism, which is the contemporary version of realism, which has been explained to us by Kenneth Waltz through his book, The Theory of International Politics, which was published in 1979. After the publication of this book, there were many other scholars who contributed to the school of defensive realism, and there are many others who contributed to offensive realism. But this is supposed to be the contemporary version of realism, which tries to explain international politics in this particular framework. Thank you.